It's the Bold Republic Radio Show. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me and joining us right now by video stream all the way. I want to make sure that I got this right. You're in Washington, D.C., is that correct?
That is correct.
And Arvin Vohra?
Correct.
Oh, I got it right. I'm so proud of myself. Well, the Libertarian Party in Washington, D.C., he gave the Libertarian response to President Obama's State of the Union address, so I think he did such a fine job, I had to give you a chance on this one as well. Possible presidential candidate, Scott Walker, gave a message, which I just played just before that last break for the folks out there, and I thought, well, let's hear a Libertarian perspective on that, because I thought the message of let's pull power out of Washington, D.C., give it back to the states, and turn it over to the people as well so they can build their own lives without so much government rules and regulations giving them free stuff and telling them how to live. I thought that was a good start, but I have to ask you now, did he go far enough?
You know, in terms of the presentation, I thought it was well professionally produced and all that. In terms of the actions that we're seeing, there are problems that we don't have to really look too far. I mean, there are things that I would consider to be a problem that the Walker campaign is actually bragging about. You know, one of which is putting more money into a failed public school system. I think that's the wrong direction. I believe, and I believe many libertarians also believe, that the correct step, the correct first step for public schools is to first eliminate all truancy laws, then eliminate all regulations on all forms of private schooling, homeschooling, whatever kind of schooling, and give parents a complete and absolute choice in every single aspect of their kids' education. So that's one area where I think that we need to see a lot more of moving in that direction, a lot less of moving in the other.
Well, and in order to do what he said, as far as giving power back to the states, the first thing I think of is, and I'm in Wyoming, we have a problem with a so-called conservative governor, which, as far as I'm concerned, he's not. He wants to do this Medicaid expansion thing. Get off of the federal government money. First, quit sending them your money, but then get off of the federal government money, because with that comes a lot of change and regulation for the states.
I think it's really important that we recognize that state governments are kind of in many ways just as bad as federal governments. The point that we're trying to drive home is this: we need to get that power back to the people. You know, we talk about regulation, we talk about the expenses of regulation, and any business regulation you cut is going to save a lot of money. There's no question about that. I 100% agree. But the most expensive kind of regulation that you can possibly have is regulations on people's personal lives, because those are the hardest to enforce. You have to enforce people, what they're doing in their own private life, in their bedrooms, in their kitchens. You have to go there. So there's that huge cost. And secondly, there's no benefit. There's no possible benefit. And there's a huge then additional cost of, once you've managed to enforce this insane law, now you have to incarcerate people who break these laws. Talking about things like drug regulation. I mean, drug prohibition has been a huge failure. And that is a type of personal regulation that is just as damaging as business regulation. We need to see both of them go completely.
Well, we have to take a little further than that. What drove me absolutely crazy, what I opened the show with, in New Jersey, a bunch of kids decided to go around passing out flyers because of the heavy snow they just had there. So they could, offering to shovel people's driveways and sidewalks for a fee. They were stopped by the police because you have to go down to City Hall and get a $450 permit for that. So I'm not just worried about pulling away from the federal government. I think that's step one. Step two is pull away from the state government. And then step three, make sure your city government isn't run by a bunch of, well, let's face it, let's just call them what they are, like a bunch of Nazis like in that New Jersey town. So, I mean, am I right with the progression here?
Absolutely, but I don't think it has to be a time sequential progression. I think it's something that can happen all at once. You know, right now we have so many libertarian candidates, both in the last election and already declared in this election, that are running at the state level, running at the local level, running at the federal level, planning to downsize all parts of government, not to just shift it around, but to completely downsize it, get the government completely out of areas of all parts of government, whether it's federal, state, or local.
All right, now here's the hard part for your candidate, Arvin.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying I disagree with him, but this is going to be the hard part. It's really difficult to defeat Santa Claus in an election.
The direct experience that so many people have with this quote Santa Claus is to realize that Santa Claus is so terribly abusive. You know, one of my friends who grew up as a Democrat, you know, his father was a Democratic congressman, he's currently going through the insanely difficult and insanely expensive process of getting FDA approval, not for a drug, mind you, for a type of catheter, basically a plastic tube, and to be able to get the approval is going to cost several $1 million of regulation. We're talking about a few, like maybe a few tens of thousands of dollars in the research and actual development of this product, and millions in getting past the government. And this is the type of thing that's going to allow, it's going to save so many lives and reduce so much discomfort. This is going to allow people to have a single shot when they're getting a catheter done instead of having to do multiple shots. But again, we see the government getting in the way of that. So more and more people are seeing that it is not a Santa Claus. Right. It's just somebody that's getting in the way and abusing and creating problems and getting in the way of people who know better than what they're doing.
Well, we saw that. Let me wrap it up with this. We saw that also with Obamacare, because people like me, I had my health insurance set up the way I wanted. I just had myself covered for a few catastrophic things. Other than that, I saved my money and I paid out of pocket. Mm-hmm. So government was supposed to help me with that, but instead they canceled contracts, which I did not give them permission to do, and then they ordered me to buy a bunch of stuff that I didn't want, and at enormous cost that most people can't afford, or you're going to have to pay a fine that a lot of people can't afford. I'm thinking people are starting to see the abuse here.
They are, and I think Obamacare is a perfect example of that. I mean, the first step, and as we've been talking about over the last week, the first step is to get rid of Obamacare. But we have to remember, it's not just Obama that increased federal health care. Bush did the same thing with his Medicare expansion. We need to roll back each of those, but most importantly, we need to first get rid of these regulatory agencies that are getting in the way of progress and innovation. Specifically, and most especially, the FDA has to go.
All right, thank you for coming on, as always, especially at the last minute like this. I appreciate it. Where can people follow your work and also on social media?
Best place to go is lp.org or facebook.com/libertarians.
All right, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.